the biggest thing that gets in agents' way is fear. When you see things start to shift, right? You get up in your head and you start thinking, and so you might learn something, but all the things Jennifer just covered, you start thinking, does it really work? Is it just for Jennifer, not for me? Like, you have to focus on what we can do to get into action and the small manageable steps that you have, because it will work if you're consistent. All the things we're talking about. Do you need to connect with more leads now than 6 months ago? Probably, right? Do you need to talk with more leads now to get the same results you used to? But that's why the action is so important. So what I want to show you, really simple communication strategies that if you focus on the action pieces and you focus on these pieces, it'll help you get out of fear, because you can't feel fear. You can't feel fearful and confident at the same time. Does that make sense? Your brain can only choose one emotion. So we want to focus on the things where we're going to bring you back to like, no, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. I sat on a webinar all day and I learned so much. And I am now going to master 1, 2, 3, pick how many of the speakers that talked and master one little piece of what they talked about as you start with implementation. So this is our little visualization when I talk about communication. And Jennifer, you're going to see how this piggybacks on the stuff you're talking about with the email communication, your open rates. Does everyone see this wonderful, happy guy driving an RV there? All right, good. So I always talk about a semi-truck driver, but in this particular case, I think that picture actually he's driving an RV. So whatever it is, when I say don't picture a semi-truck driver, that's a joke. As soon as I don't picture a semi-truck driver and I got a picture of the screen, what's the first thing you're thinking about? A semi-truck driver, obviously. So this is going to frame up our conversation on communication. When you can get it this simple and this bottom line, this will help all of the marketing communication, whether it's new outbound lead communication, or it's follow-up communication, or communication with a client that you're already working with, a listing you have, a buyer you're out showing property. These things I'm going to show you, they work all the time with anyone. So why do I say don't picture a semi-truck driver? We've got limited attention span to deal with. We are in an overstimulated world that you are vying for someone's attention no matter how you're communicating with them. Think about this. If you were writing a message, a text message, or an email to someone who is literally sitting behind the wheel of a semi-truck, okay? They're driving this big rig. They're going 70 miles an hour. Marcus, are we using miles per hour or kilometers in Canada? What do we use in Canada?
It's kilometers. Oh, you
kilometers. All right. So you're going, I don't know the conversion. 20.
You're speaking to mostly Americans, so go for it. And I'm American.
I just want to make the Canadians feel welcome. That's part of it. We want to make sure this is part of our communication style. I want to make sure the Canadians, Jeanette gave me a thumbs up. We got to make sure Canadians feel welcome. So driving like 100 kilometers an hour, 70 miles an hour, whatever it is. Okay, they're driving this big rig. While they're driving this big rig, they start to feel a little hungry. So they pick up the sandwich off the seat next to them and they're eating a sandwich. Okay. While they're doing that, they get thirsty. On the other hand, they grab their drink and then they feel like they should probably reapply their makeup at the same time. They start doing their makeup while eating a sandwich and drinking a drink and driving a semi-truck. At that moment, your text message or your email shows up on their phone and they go to glance at it. How much of their brain power are they giving when they look at your message? Does that make sense? Very, very little. Because if they do any more than that, they're going to crash and they're going to die. This is how I always imagine that anytime I send any sort of outbound piece of communication, this is, right? This is, I'm reading Marcus' chat. I'll stop reading your chats, Marcus. This is really what we have to make sure that we focus on. See, there you go, distracted human being. Okay, this is why we have to make sure our communication is so laser lightning focused. So if you learn nothing else from what I'm going to show you, if you just always pick, the reason I'd spend so much time on that image is because when you're going through this, every time you send a piece of communication, I want you to think back through, are we violating that rule? So the first one here, violating the blank space to text ratio, right? Jennifer did a fantastic job with this. You might get, some of you guys are putting together these follow-up emails with your CMAs and they got all these words and these blah, 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 blah. Right? It might look like this. No one's going to read this. This is an email from Steve Jobs. If you got this email from Steve Jobs, you might look at it only because it was Steve Jobs. And you're like, why is Steve Jobs sending me an email? Right? He's been dead for many years. It'd be very strange. But other than that, you probably flag it for later because I think it's too long, too much words. Okay. Black to white ratio. This is the text is the black, white space, right? The way I write emails, they're much more open space. You saw Jennifer's, there was lots of white open space. You had a couple lines, if you remember in your memory, it was like a couple lines of text at the top and then the video below. If you're sending an email, by the way, you want the text before the video because then that text will show up on the preview screen of the email provider, right? You want the first couple of words to be something that will draw them in and make them want to open it. On the flip side, if you're sending a text to someone, any of you guys send video text messages? I know Krista Mayshore spoke earlier today, right? Hopefully a lot of you are sending video text messages. I always follow my video text message with a word-based text message afterwards. Do you guys know why you want to do that? Okay. Text messages have a very high open rate. However, they only show the latest text message you sent. The first couple of words of it's what's going to show up in the preview page of your phone. Does that make sense? So if you send a video, or if you send words first and the video second, all it says on most people's phones is video message. And if it's from an unknown number or someone they don't know, I ain't clicking on that until I've got a lot of time and I've got downtime, or I'm sitting around. Maybe it's, using the toilet at 2 a.m. I don't know. But like, that's when most of you guys are going to change those unknown numbers and weird videos. Like no one's looking. But if you write some letters that get them to call them in or reference something that they requested, you get a lot better rate of people looking at your messages quickly. So that's the black to white ratio. On this one here, you want to consider if your messages are read on a desktop or a phone. For most of you, if you're unsure, just assume they're reading it on a phone. These days, the majority of the communication you send out is read on a phone. So if you're writing your messages out on a computer, which a lot of you do in the StreetText platform or anything else, preview it on your phone. Does that make sense? Like make sure it looks okay when you're looking at the preview on your phone. It's still going to look fine on a desktop also. All right, bullet points. And I just have a couple more slides and we'll go back to just a little conversation and I'll tie it all together, Marcus. I want to give you guys, again, these are simple, easy things to boost your confidence in your communication. That is the most important thing, is that you're feeling confident about what you're sending out, because it will get you into action to use it. So bullet points to your friends. I use bullet points in text messages. This is an ongoing communication with a client. This is a client we had under contract. This is, I use a green checkbox for my bullet points in a text message. In an email, obviously, it's easy to use them. But anytime you want to communicate any sort of information that's longer than a few sentences, see if you can bullet point it out. All right, this is going to be a big one for some of you. And I want you to type in the chat box if you're like, nope, I never do it. Ready? How many of you guys reread your emails out loud before you send them? Type in the chat box, I never do that. Be honest. Or if you do, type in the chat box, say, yes, I do. Okay? Reread your emails out loud before sending. It's going to take you an extra 30 seconds, a minute, tops. Let's see what we got. I want to look at the chat box. Sometimes, always, I do. I love it. Okay, so those of you that do, those of you that already do it, guess what? You're going to feel really good. You're going to be like, I do this. That's boosting your confidence. Anything you can do to continue your confidence being high, like, I got that habit already. That is reinforcing you're already on the right track. Those of you that aren't doing it, take the minute and reread it out loud. Out loud is the key, because most people read emails. Anytime you're writing a marketing message, read it out loud and see what it sounds like, because most people read hearing a voice in their head. Typically, it's their own voice. Sometimes in the voice, it sounds like, hi, here's what's up. I don't know what your voice sounds like, but like usually it's their own voice in their head. It's how people read. So you might as well make sure it's sounding good when it's read out loud. All right, my last little point here before we pull it all together. This is going to be important. When you are crafting your messages looking for responses, you don't want to ask more than one question in an email, especially not in a text, because they will ignore the multiple questions and just respond to the one that you didn't want them to ask to that one, right? It's the same problem with giving them too many options. So if you want a response here, you want to end your email with one question and one question only, right? So going back to, if you were on a few minutes ago with Jennifer, when she sent out, hey, you're looking to get the responses back on if they have any upgrades in their house that you need to know about that'll affect the value. The last thing you want in that email, you want it to say, are there any upgrades I should know about? Question mark. Right? That'll be the last thing you see in that email, so that way, and you could ask it above the same question and repeat it again at the end. I might ask a question and feel like I need to explain it, and then I will end my email with the same question, so that the last thing they see, their brain will automatically go into a response. I've tested this both ways. And when you end your text or your email with a question mark being the last thing that you were going over, it will absolutely increase your response rate. Is this making sense, guys? Is this helpful to hear? I really just wanted to, I condensed it, Marcus. We got plenty more things we can go over, but I wanted to condense it to the most simple, easy strategies, not to overwhelm, not to think like, dear God, I could never remember all these things he's talking about, like super simple things. All it is actionable and confidence. I'm going to say this to you because I want to hammer this home. Anytime you feel the thought pop into your head of, I don't know, but news is saying this market is shifting, the news of this, I heard this or that, or man, I want you to refocus on one, the positives in a changing market, which is how much easier is it to get a buyer's offer accepted these days, right? I just got a contingent offer accepted for a buyer. Woo! Right? Like, we couldn't have done that 6 weeks ago. Couldn't have done that 6 months ago. Like, now we're starting to get things accepted where some of the buyers, Do you need to talk through more? Can you resurrect old ones that had stopped looking? Absolutely. Do you need to talk through more people to look for the ones that are motivated, that don't care what the interest rates are at? Absolutely. But this is a market that there is opportunity in, as long as you put yourself in a position where if you get out of fear and you get into action and doing these things that really work well, that's what's going to keep you in that actionable state. All right. Joe says, this question's been working for me well. When would be a good time for me to pop by for 15 minutes? I love it, Joe. Question mark. If you end a text or an email, but look at that. Don't after that, Joe, write 6 more things of, because I've been an expert in the area for this long and that. Like, you want to end with whatever it is. I'm an expert in the area. Here's your value. When would be a good time to pop by for 15 minutes? Question mark. I love that, Joe.